If you're as old as I am and you really love cars, you'll have very fond memories of the Peugeot 205. The GTI was a monster, particularly the 1.9 litre version. For the mid-80s, it was incredibly fast. Ironically, the e-208 that we have here is almost exactly the same time to get to 60 miles per hour, except this time it's electrically driven. Before we carry on with the review though, if you enjoy this video, please don't forget to like it and subscribe to our YouTube channel. It says a lot about how far cars have come in 35 years, though what was once the performance of the hottest of hot hatches is now just the capability of a standard electric compact car. However, the e-208 is part of a 208 range that includes 4 petrol and 1 diesel engine options. The electric version is the fastest one, which appears to be a Stellantis strategy, making the EV the GTI equivalent. So perhaps that 205 GTI comparison is more apt after all. There are 5 trim levels available for the e-208: Active Premium, Allure, Allure Premium, GT and GT Premium. The differences in price vary as you go up, but no trim is more than £1,000 dearer than the one below. All cars have push-button start, Bluetooth phone connectivity, DAB radio and the iCockpit dashboard, plus a central LCD. All cars have electric windows front and back. It's quite confusing working out what each trim level adds, and a lot is cosmetic, such as a black B-pillar on the Allure and above and nicer seat materials. This is made even more confusing because the electric versions of the 208 get features like rear USB ports, automatic wipers and automatic air conditioning at lower trim levels than the fossil fuel versions. All cars have rear parking sensors, but this is augmented by a rear camera with the Allure Premium and above. Front sensors arrive with the GT version, so these are some reasons to buy a better trim. However, the big differentiation is whether or not it has a sat-nav. It's such an expensive optional extra that it's almost on its own worth getting the next model up that does have a sat-nav, if that's something you actually want. If you want adaptive cruise control, you will need the GT Premium. This is also the only one with heated front seats. The basic colour is yellow, with white being £275, metallic colours £545 and pearlescent £695. Metallics include a couple of greys and black, while pearlescents include red, blue and white. Our sample is one rung down from the top, a GT, in pearlescent vertigo blue. The name seems apt because it's quite bright. The basic car has 16-inch alloy wheels. You get nicer looking diamond cut alloys with the Allure, and then GT and GT Premium add 17-inch diamond cut alloys. You can even add a panoramic sunroof for 500 quid. One thing all the cars have in common is that ubiquitous Stellantis drivetrain with the 50 kilowatt hour battery and 136 bhp motor. As you can see, this car seems to have keyless entry, which is supposed to be a feature of the next model up, the GT Premium. Anyway, the car's open. Let's take a look inside. None of the e-208s has real leather seats, but the material does get plusher as you go up the range. The basic car has cloth, then a leather-like material is used from the Allure and above, with different colour stitching. The GT Premium switched to Alcantara and adds heating. The seats are comfortable enough and you get a decent amount of headroom. Maybe if you're 6'5", it's a bit short, but anybody kind of normal size will be fine. However, one thing you don't get on any of the cars, whatever the trim level, is electric seat adjustments. Everything is manual. However, although this car is very similar to the Vauxhall Corsa, one thing we do like about it is it feels a little bit more luxurious inside. In the central console, you get a couple of cup holders. There's a small cubby back here with a little thing to keep your small change in. You get a bit of extra space here. There's a 12-volt adapter plug there. You get USB-C and regular USB, and under here is a place to put your phone. Now, this is supposed to be so you can prop your phone up, but as you can see, my Max doesn't really fit there. However, it does fit in this space, which is where the wireless charger is. Now that is £100 extra that does seem to be fitted on this particular car. There's also a fairly minimally sized glove compartment, which, as you can see, is just enough for a pair of gloves and not much more. The rear headroom is also pretty good, but as you can see, the knee room is pretty cramped. If this seat were any further back, my knees would be right up against it, which isn't ideal. This middle seat also is rather minimal too. You wouldn't really want to be an adult sitting in the back here in the middle for a long period. There are 2 USB ports in the back as well, but no rear air conditioning vents. The rear passengers also have these magazine pouches for your kids to put their copies of The Economist or whatever it is that kids read these days. Another thing you don't get in the rear is any kind of middle armrest or cup holder. You also get ISOFIX points on both the outer rear seats. The ISOFIX points on the front seat are only available with certain trim levels. So this is a hatchback, so storage space isn't enormous. It's a reasonably sized boot, 311 litres, so kind of mid-range for this kind of car. There's a little bit of extra underneath here, which is just for some kits, emergency stuff. Then if you remove the parcel shelf, so these seats now go forward with a 40-60 arrangement. So this will increase the boot space to 1,106 litres, which is pretty decent, but standard for a hatchback. However, you'll notice that this isn't completely flat. You've got this kind of step, which isn't ideal for some kinds of luggage. You'll notice that the headrest was up when I dropped the seat forward, which is a good thing. Although this has a very similar drivetrain to the Vauxhall Corsa, Peugeot has erred on the side of range, and this car has a basic 217 miles, which is a bit more than the Corsa. There's a typical CCS port, and with a 7 kilowatt home AC charging, you can replenish the battery in 7.5 hours. Rapid charging on 100 kilowatt DC will take a reasonable half an hour to 30%. 11 kilowatt AC is a £300 extra. This is a reasonably economical car with a 14p per kilowatt hour supply, which we know is starting to get a bit rare. This car is 3.2p per mile. Not too bad. So this is a front wheel drive car. Because it's part of the same range where they have petrol and diesel variants, you can see that it has a fairly typical fully stocked front engine compartment. One thing we should say about the range is we did notice with the Corsa that the range indicator could be a bit erratic. However, this car, it's a little bit more predictable. However, you're still not going to get that range that they state. It's a little bit optimistic. We think it's probably going to be more like 150, 160 miles you get out of this car. So one stylistic feature that you may or may not like is this rather angular steering wheel, which the benefit of it is that you can see over the top quite easily, and also the home hand positions are pretty easy to find. However, you might find it a little bit odd not being round. The steering wheel does have buttons on it, but we quite like the fact that these are a bit bigger and not so many as in some cars, so they're a bit easier to find without having to kind of look and hunt around. You've got the windscreen wiper stalk on one side. So on the left here you've got the stalk for the lights and indicators, and this one is for the cruise control. It's worth mentioning that the cruise control is only standard on the GT Premium. Every other car will need to have an optional extra payment for the adaptive cruise control. All cars get some kind of dashboard display, but this is the 3D version of the iCockpit, which, as you can see, has got some kind of depth perception. Peugeot calls it a head-up display, which is a little bit wrong. It's not really a head-up display, but it's quite cool. The basic drive control is performed with this kind of gear stick-like contraption, which is similar to the automatic Peugeots. You can pull back for drive, forward for reverse. You do have to press this button on the side to engage those. There's a park button on the top. There's an electronic park brake, and this toggle here switches between eco, normal and sport modes. The air conditioning has its own set of keys, which are these kind of piano-like things. You'll also notice that there are keys up here for controlling the LCD panel, which is the next thing we're going to talk about. This central touchscreen is 7-inch on models up to the Allure Premium and 10-inch like this one on the GT and GT Premium. The connected 3D sat-nav is standard from GT above, including a 3-year subscription to TomTom Live Traffic, weather, charging stations and online points of interest search. However, adding the connected sat-nav to the Active Premium and Allure costs £650 and a £950 upgrade for the 10-inch screen with the sat-nav on the Allure Premium. As we already said, these prices alone could be enough to warrant getting the GT trim. However, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto is standard on all cars, so you can use that to provide your satellite navigation. The e-208's similarity to the Vauxhall Corsa continues to the driving experience. In theory, the e-208 is half a second slower to 60 miles per hour than the Corsa, but you wouldn't really notice most of the time. Reaching 62 miles per hour in 8.1 seconds is decent enough, even though quite a lot of EVs are actually quicker. Despite being very slightly quicker to 62 miles per hour than that 80s 205 I mentioned, the handling is very different because it's 600 kilograms heavier. You can still have some fun in this car, although there is a vague sense of torque steer when you put your foot down hard. The steering is quite precise and fast, which is a nice surprise. However, despite what we said at the beginning of this video, this isn't a GTI, it's just a reasonably fast hatchback. Definitely enjoyable for zipping around cities, but planted enough for highways too. Safety features are another reason why you might want to buy one of the higher trim levels. Active safety braking is standard across the range, as is acoustic warning for pedestrians. There is also some form of lane keep assistance plus speed limit and road sign recognition. However, if you want blind spot detection, you're going to need to get the GT or GT Premium trim level. The active safety brake feature also gets a night function with cyclist and pedestrian detection. However, although cruise control is another standard feature, if you want it to be adaptive, you're going to need to get the GT Premium. It's an upgrade option for £500 for the Allure Premium and £300 for the GT. The GT Premium is also the only one with active lane assistance rather than just warnings. The e-208 was already cheap enough to fall below the government's new £35,000 cut-off for the plug-in grant, so no changes there. Prices range from just over $27,000 for the active premium to $31,500 for the GT Premium. The car we're driving is a touch under $31,000. The basic warranty is 3 years, the first 2 of which are for unlimited miles. The battery has the typical separate 8-year, 100,000 miles, 70% capacity warranty. Peugeot specifies a 2-year, 16,000 mile service interval. The insurance group is a little higher at 28, considering that the faster BMW i3 is in the same one. The e-208 seems like reasonable value for an EV with its abilities at the moment, but we can't help feeling that it won't be long before $27,000 starts to feel expensive, even for an electric hatchback. Although it's a fairly basic car, the seating's got a nice feel to it. There's a bit of extra bolster at the side to keep you in when you drive around corners. It has a slightly sporty feeling about it. We would say Peugeot's got the suspension just about right as well. Although it's not too bouncy, it does absorb bumps reasonably well. We're driving along a road here that's got quite a lot of ruts in it, even though it's a very posh road. And it's soaking up reasonably well. As you can see, it's got quite a nice little rear view camera for when you're reversing, and also a fake 360 view. Although this isn't a Renault, it certainly does have a little bit of that va-va-voom. The e-208 is an attractive electric hatchback, although we do wish it had 50 miles more range. The Peugeot e-2008 is a larger, more practical vehicle. Spiritually, it's not exactly the successor to the Peugeot 205 GTI, but it is fun to drive. It's also stylish and not hideously expensive. So if you're after a handy electric hatchback, it should definitely be on your list. If you enjoy this video, please don't forget to like it and subscribe to our YouTube channel.